All right. Hey guys, welcome to Dirt Diamond Sports Talk. I'm Ryan. Got my
I'm
man
Wally.
Wally. We're here again on a Monday morning talking about Astros and MLB news. Wally, how was the weekend, despite the painful performance by our boys?
Well, let's talk about the first part of the week. One of the most important parts of the week is the Astros sent the Diamondbacks into sell mode.
They
Torey
did.
Lavello was on MLB Network Radio talking to the guys on Power Rally in the morning, and he essentially said the same thing. He said, three games in a row, they have to take an assessment of where they are, and look what's happened. Josh Naylor's gone to Seattle. You've seen Randall Grichuk get traded, and of all the guys who we're talking about, we'll talk about the trade deadline later. The Diamondbacks are right in the middle of it. The weekend was one of those things that happened, and we can wrap this up too. We have a lot of guys. When you look at the lineup, half the guys that were in AAA and are probably fringe major leaguers anyway, or rookies just getting their feet wet. And when you've got half that lineup, you're going to run into a hot team. This is what's going to happen. Guys have played over their heads for a month and a half. The Astros injuries are unprecedented, and you had to see this coming at some point in time.
Did you sulk? Did you throw anything on the grill?
I did the yard.
You did the yard. Yeah, I got a text from Wally about halfway through one of the games. He said, "I think now's a good time to go out and do the yard."
It was brutal.
Man.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time since we've seen the Astros get abused. It was like 2013 all over again.
It was
brutal.
It was brutal. The weekend
Now,
was a little crazy here because my wife is starting her professional MBA program down at Rice, and so this weekend was kind of spent just kind of getting her ready and spending time together, with the family. And I was at the shop a lot over the weekend, and she's gone all week, and it's her launch week, so this is kind of her first big week down on campus at Rice. And so, I didn't spend a ton of time actually watching the games and getting the notifications. And I'm kind of plugging in and plugging out of some of the games. And it was depressing. And it was kind of to the point where I didn't really want to, pull up the actual video, watch the actual games pitch by pitch, because I was just like, this is not going well, one. And two, this is unfortunately like something that I think a lot of us Astros fans kind of halfway, not predicted, but we just kind of felt like this period of struggle was upon us, and we just didn't know when it was going to hit. And it hit. And so we have to ask, was this the worst series of the season for the Astros?
Well, I feel like Homer Simpson in the Simpsons movie when he asked Bart, "Is this the worst day of your life?" And Bart looks at him and says, "No, it's the worst day of your." No, Bart says, "This is the worst day of my life," and Homer says, "No, it's the worst day of your life so far."
So far.
Let's go take a look at, just to give you an idea. It's going to get better because we're going to get guys coming back. Thankfully, we've got the Nats coming in for 3 this week, so hopefully that can get things going. But when you've got guys like, let's look at, you had Colton Gordon in Game 4. You have Jason Alexander in Game 1, Gusto in Game 2. Those 3 are fringe guys anyway. Gusto, the more you see him, is setting up to be a middle reliever. Jason Alexander's a guy that's just hanging on. Colton Gordon, we're still looking to see what he's got, but he's got to get more difference in his pitches. And, he's a control guy, but he doesn't have stuff to stay in the strike zone all the time. So he's going to have to learn to get guys to chase, because when he just stays in the strike zone all the time, second time through, it's batting practice. The one I'm more concerned about is Hunter Brown. Because when you look at Hunter over the last, his numbers at last, call it 5 starts. His ERA is in those last, he's 3.9, 9 run ERA, 7.20 ERA, 6.75 ERA, 180 in this game. But you're looking at a guy with an ERA of around 5. And when you look at how many strikes he's throwing as compared to what the total is, 60, 62. This last game, he threw 55% strikes, and pitches per inning are typically in the 15 to 20 and 20 range. Against the Mariners, it was 22 pitches an inning. You're asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble. You think that difference in number of strikes, that adds to more batters, which adds to more pitches, which adds to more runs. Yep. He's got to get it figured out. He seems to me like he's throwing all fastballs, throwing hard stuff, and he's kind of forgot what the curveball looks like. And to me, it looks like he needs to throw the curveball more to get him off the fastball so he can slow their bats down. So when he throws that fastball, he can put it past him. He's having a tough time finishing batters off.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this series was a complete meltdown across the whole team.
Yeah.
Pitching, there was some defensive woes, and then just offensively. 7 total runs across 4 games is unheard of for this team. 1, they went 3 for 29 with runners in scoring position. 3 for 29 with runners in scoring position. And given up 35 runs in 4 games to the
I'll let you grab some.
Let
me give you grab your Malox and let me give you some numbers here real quick. Average, you're right. They had the runs they had. Average for the series was 187. On base percentage 242. Slug of 260. A OPS of 503. Okay, you hitting a little over 100 for the runners in scoring position, and you left 3 runners on for every run you scored. Usually kind of a number is if you can keep that number of left on base to the run scored, below 1.5, you typically have a good chance to win if you scored a few runs, and you just get it's just a recipe for disaster, and it blew up on.
Yep. Well, and they're approaching an MLB record for allowing the opposing team to score first.
Yeah, 18 in a row.
18 games in a row.
They are right now.
Yep. And so the record, the MLB record is 19. That goes back to the 40s, I think, if I recall correctly, hearing on one of the broadcasts.
Probably the Washington Senators.
It's probably something crazy like that. I don't even remember who it was, but and an interesting stat, and I don't have the specifics in front of me, but when they score first, they have almost a 750 winning percentage. When the other team scores first, they're a 500 team.
Huh. Hey, here's one thing I just looked a second ago. Even in the Diamondback series, okay, when we're all up and down of how well they did, they were 4 for 31 and with runners in scoring position against the Diamondbacks. Now, 31 runners in scoring position is a lot in the 3-game series. They had an OPS of 743, but what that does is it highlights the problem the Astros have had the entire season. Is they have typically a very good batting average. They had 339 in that series, and for the season, they're hitting 256. But excuse me, I did 284 average in that series, and they're hitting 250. But their runs are down substantially. When they're on pace. They're on pace to score about a little under 700 runs. They had a little under 750 last year. So they're about a third a run a game behind where they were last year. Their slug is what's killing them. They're not. They just are not slugging.
They're 5-10 over their last 15 games, and 11 of those games they scored 3 runs or fewer.
And we've heard that a lot.
So
you and I talked about the first. Yeah, you and I talked about the first show or two we did is what's going to catch up? Is the hitting going to catch up, or the pitching going to come back to what a league average? Well, right now we're seeing the pitching come back to a league average because the hitting's not great, but it's not that far off of what it's been the rest of the season.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's been a struggle. I saw another stat too that said that the average exit velocity for the Astros hitters has dropped by almost 10 miles per hour over
Wow.
this 15 game stretch. So I think that shows if
Well, it shows
anything,
what
that
happened.
shows the massive difference between an actual MLB player and a fringe MLB player.
Right.
You have all of these fans that look at these guys that produce and that go crazy and go wild in AAA, right? All of these fans are watching Jacob Melton in AAA right now after he's come back, going nuts. And they're like, bring him up, bring him up, bring him up, bring him up. And I wish people would temper their emotions and realize the vast difference in skill, talent, ability, what you call it, whatever it is that you want. But the vast difference between AAA and the major leagues, it's just not as close. The threshold is not as close as a lot of people really think it is. And if anything, over these last 15 games and looking at the difference between the Astros average exit velocity of almost 100, almost 10 miles per hour, and the difference in exit velocity in balls struck from 100.3 down to 91.5, because the average makeup of this lineup here in Houston being majority of fringe MLB quadruple A and triple A players. um Call it whatever you want, a fringe stat, a weird kind of anomaly maybe, but the difference between AAA and some of these guys that are coming up and true MLB talent and skill is widely different. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to come up and be an MLB player from AAA, and I think if anything, these past these past 2 weeks have really shown that for the Astros.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So a big part of the reason why we're here having the conversation about the way that the Astros have been playing is because of the injury woes. We've been talking about this for how long, and the Astros have the most guys on the injured list out of the entire MLB, and it's just been a wrecking ball through this roster. When we talk about now, I guess some guys potentially coming back. We've got some guys doing some rehab starts. One of the big names that has come out is Spencer Arrighetti, hoping to come back and help this pitching staff. He's got one more rehab start that they'd really like for him to get done. What do you think about some of the names that are coming out as far as some of these rehab starts and the way that they're kind of looking down in the minors for some of these rehabs? Spencer Arrighetti has looked really good. We've got Luis Garcia has looked really good. There's some potential. Are they going to put a lot of faith in these guys really coming back? We're going to again talk about the trade deadline, but how much faith do you have on some of these guys coming up and really contributing to the team and bolstering this rotation?
Well, you've got Arrighetti, who looks like he's the first one back. Like you said, that he's been out in Corpus mainly. I don't think he's thrown at
He did.
Sugarland yet.
Yes, his last outing was in Sugarland.
Okay, so he's looking good. He's only also up to 50, 60 pitches, something like that. So that's a 4 inning start coming back. Javier, they say, is right behind him. Garcia, they're saying, is behind him. Brandon Walter, they got some good news on Brandon Walter. Is he commented that it felt like that his elbow issue was just because of overwork and not structural. He's never pitched this much, and he's just a little worn out. And it's time for him to have a DL break. hopefully Pena's back on the first, getting to the position players. Paredes looks like he's out until he's back, kind of like Jordan. Myers looks to be back late August. Melton looks to be back soon. The question is, how long can they hold these other guys off? Seattle's got a really good team right now. Naylor on his own is
The
a good,
Rangers are
and the
surging.
Rangers are coming. The Rangers are coming. The Rangers pitching's been good all season. Their lineup's finally starting to hit. So it's going to be a race down to the end of the year. I expect Arrighetti to come back, and then you tandem on with somebody. But it's a lot of pressure for these guys, and people don't realize when these guys come back, they're not going to come back what they did 2 years ago. Javier's not going to come back throwing combined no hitters when he first comes back. They're going to, given the Astros injury history, they're going to be very, very careful with these guys. They don't want a second one, because after a second one, you just never know what they're going to be, like a second Tommy John. Melton coming back is going to be huge. Myers coming back is going to be huge. And Pena coming back is going to be huge. I feel like they're going to get enough out of those pitchers coming back that returning that they'll get by you.
I think that if you can get if you can get a solid starter back, if you can get two position players back, whether it be Pena and Myers, I think Pena is probably the first big key. Everybody can say Jordan. Yes, man, getting Jordan's back,
all year.
Getting Jordan's bat back would be massive for this team right now. But from a body's standpoint and looking at the makeup of this team and the roster construction where it is right now, you need an infield guy that can hit the freaking ball. And I think Pena is the first major key to coming back. The first major key coming back to this team kind of taking that next step to getting into position where it needs to go back to healthy production and increasing run potential. Secondarily would be, shoring up the outfield again. When you're looking at the outfield of Chaz, Trammell, Hummel, I mean, it's so brutal right now.
Yeah.
Yes. And if Jake can come back and produce to the extent that he was producing before he went down, those two to me really are probably key components to this team kind of getting back on track. And then, yeah, man, if you can get Jordan back, which I don't know what they're going to do with him. It's just everything seems so up in the air with him. I mean, I don't know. Are you just going to start loading him up with I don't even know, man. Just start loading him up with cortisone injections and throw him out there and hope that you don't tank his entire career. It's such a frustrating situation with Jordan. And then, yeah, you bring up Paredes. We said this a couple weeks ago. We had hoped that it wouldn't be as long as it was, but because of the kind of silence and the uncertainty around, it was just this kind of sprain or that kind of sprain. And now it's sounding, based on some of Dana's interviews, he may be done for the season.
I think he is.
He may be done for the season, or at least until late September, late September. I mean, it's to the point where now Dana is saying that, a left-handed infielder is priority potentially at the trade deadline.
Yeah, here's what I think happens is Melton's coming back first. They're going to put Melton in center field or Trammell in center field. Maybe keep Trammell in center field simply because Melton's played left field in the bigs, and they would want Melton not to have to learn a new position. The thing with Pena coming back is it lets Dubon do what Dubon does best, which is moving around from place to place and filling in. Dubon at his best is 100 10, 115 game a year guy.
Mhm. Well,
The pitching coming
I think Dubon becomes your quasi everyday third baseman.
could be. I mean, he's played there well so far. He's also a guy I think they want to get off his feet as they can. They still need an infielder, which comes up to to the trade deadline. You're talking about who do the Astros go after? There's several names that have come up. There's some that are higher profile, but I don't think the Astros go after him. You've heard of Eugenio Suarez. He doesn't come to the Astros. I don't think he's that good of a fit.
I don't think the
Willie
Astros
Castro.
have enough to compete for
I
him
don't
because
think they
he's going
do
to be
either.
a pretty popular piece across the league.
Yeah, and I think Willie Castro's a better fit. He can play more positions. He can hit. He's a rental. They don't have to give up
Yep.
much for him.
Yep.
Another guy, Brendan Donovan's a left-handed bat, but you're hearing rumblings the Cardinals really want to keep him, so it's going to take a lot to get him out. There's really, when you look around, there's not really a ton of guys that you want and you just say, hey, I got to have this guy. And our trade deadline might be just the guys that are coming back, and they just have to hold this thing together with chewing gum and baling wire. The guys in the outfield, Cedric Mullins, no. Cedric Mullins on the backside of his career and he's a negative WAR player. Defensive metrics have dropped. The one that I kind of a sexy name that I would like them to take a look at is Mickey Moniak. He's the former number 1 draft pick. He's a left-handed bat, and he's got some pretty good power, albeit it's in Coors Field. He's affordable, only making a couple of mil. He goes into his first ARB year now, and he'll be a free agent after 27. So he's a controllable guy coming from Colorado. If they're willing to pay up a little bit so Colorado can get some bodies, I can see them doing that, putting a Whitcomb and putting, a decent minor leaguer in that package to get Moniak. I think that would be a real good fit for the Astros.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to scroll back. The Astros picked up a guy off the waiver wire.
Logan Davidson. He's
Thank
minor
you.
leaguer.
There it is. Yeah, he was
Logan David
he's an infielder. So, maybe that's something that they're hoping will work out. I don't know, man. It's a wild ride. I mean, I think that it's Dana. We said it last week. Dana's got his work cut out for him, and he's about to earn his money here over the next couple of days for sure. And I think, the key, there's 2 keys here. And I think we said it just a second ago, is how many of these 3 or 4 guys that we named are going to really come back, and are they confident that they're going to come back and be able to get back to, pre-injury performance? And that's Pena, Jake, that's Jake Myers.
Right.
Potentially is Jordan going to be able to come back and do something? And then a mixture of, who else? Jacob Melton, etc. The thing for me is, how much faith are they going to put in from a potential looking at trades perspective? How much faith are they going to put into, and how much do they have in these 3 guys specifically, I guess, that are coming back off the IL? It's tough. And,
It's tough, man.
when you look at Arrighetti, Javier, and Luis Garcia, that could go one of 2 ways, man. That could freaking make the season for this Astros team. You could give so much relief to this starting lineup that is gassed right now.
Mm-hmm.
Starting rotation, sorry. That is gassed right now. Or those guys could come back and just struggle hard. Throw Lance McCullers in there. This blister thing, what? I don't know. Call me a conspiracy theorist.
Well, you and I,
all you want, but bro.
Ryan and I were texting back and forth, and we can imagine what the conversation went like. Says, Lance, you got a blister? No, I feel
What blister?
fine.
I'm good.
Someone comes up with a hot curling iron, puts it on his finger, and says, "I do now."
Got a blister now, bro. I don't know.
But
Two two
it
two
it
weeks
is
for a
so
blister. I don't know, man. Yeah.
one of my pet peeves is people who are like us. We pay attention to it pretty closely, and people who pay attention to it less than us try to throw these wild trades or act like Dana's stupid. You know, and just talking to this, we follow this as close as most people or more. And we just shake our heads and say, man, Dana's got his work cut out for him because there are
Mhm.
no really easy answers. The players that we want, everybody else is going to want too. The Astros of farm system, when they bring guys up, they tend to overperform their prospect status, but there's still there's not a lot to trade from. It's not like the Orioles who can trade, if they wanted to, or the Mariners can trade like a Henry Ford, the catcher. Everybody wants a good catcher.
Well, I mean, Dana did say, he said if we have to trade, we may have to trade from the MLB roster, from the big league roster,
And
um,
Chaz is the one.
which was very interesting. And so I think that speaks to a couple of guys. I think that speaks to, yeah, it speaks to probably Chaz, Wickham, maybe Hummel, Trammell. There's a couple of those guys that, like you said, have performed above their sea level and, may actually get some looks um, in the trade market, and their value may be just slightly inflated right now, and may be able to actually help the Astros out in getting something done. And I'm okay with that. And I think that there's very few untouchables when it comes to some of those fringe names
Yeah, no.
that have been brought up to get done what needs to get done. But again, the problem with that is your depth going into August and September, even if you make a couple of moves like that, because if you're running a few of those MLB guys out and some of your prospects, you're still looking at potential depth problems if, and again, there are any further injuries that come to this team in the next weeks and month remaining. I mean, it's a struggle, and it's something that's difficult to really kind of think about. But in the grand scheme of things, this team over the last decade has always figured out a way to make something happen. And you look at the last month to 6 weeks of what this team has gone through, and we can talk about the struggles of the last whatever 2 weeks, the last 15 games, okay, 5-10 over the last 15 games. We can talk about those struggles, but the Astros issues go back 6 weeks almost. And the way that they played ball through the beginning of that really has set them up, I think, to have a good August and September, to be honest with you, because if they would have taken everything that smacked them across the face back then 6 weeks ago and struggled then, the season would be done. They would be in the situation right now today after a sweep from the A's that the Diamondbacks were in after we swept the Diamondbacks. And the Astros could very easily have been at the end of this weekend saying,
We're done.
we're done
We done.
and we're sellers. We're out. Fromber, let's go get some freaking prospects and let's run them out. But instead, because 6 weeks ago, this team performed at unreasonable levels
Yeah.
due to guys coming in and stepping up that nobody expected, this team is still in it and they're still in the
Yeah.
driver's seat. And so
The
I think that
Astros.
there's an opportunity here for them to still continue to produce and perform and to own this division. But there's definitely Dana's got to do some work. We've got to hope that these guys come back healthy. And again, if these couple of guys that are coming back off the IL pitcher wise, man, can come back and contribute, it could be the key to this team just steamrolling August and September.
The Astros, as far as getting rid of guys on the MLB roster, the Astros standard is elevated to what you look at with the Dodgers, the Yankees, some of these other teams. The standard is winning. And if your depth is hurt the rest of the season, you just roll the dice and say these guys that are coming back are going to stay healthy. If you need to get some of these depth pieces, you do it in the winter.
Yep. Yep. All right. Well, it was a big weekend for baseball off the field as well, Wally.
Yeah, it was.
Up in Cooperstown, we had Hall of Fame inductions, and one of our guys got pulled in, Billy Wagner, who for a long time, especially here in Houston, the drum was beat hard that it took too long for this guy to get voted in.
Sure it did.
And his speech and the accolades and the hoopla around him finally getting in was well deserved.
Yeah, there's a few things you want to look at with Billy Wagner. When players retire, usually the game tells them to retire. When Billy Wagner retired, he retired because he wanted to retire. You look at his last year with Atlanta, he had a 7-2 record with about a 150 ERA, something obnoxious in that number. Mm-hmm. If he wanted just to burnish his credentials, he could have stayed 2 or 3 years longer. He didn't. He wanted to go coach his kids. So, there was no more dominant pitcher than Billy Wagner in his time. And, being a left-handed
in the tribute, Billy or Craig Biggio in the little tribute that Biggio did, he even spoke to that. He spoke to the fact that he went to Billy Wagner and said, "Man, are you really sure about this retirement thing? Like, bro, you're still out there throwing 100 miles an hour. Like, are you sure about this retirement thing?" And that's what Billy said. He said, "Yes, I'm sure." Like, and you just said it. He said, "Usually the game retires guys." He said, "I'm going to retire the game because I'm ready. It's time for me. It's not the game, telling me it's time." Yeah.
Well, and usually if you don't have it in you, the game starts telling you. Uh-huh. If you don't have that fire, the game will tell you. One of the things I heard, and I have to admit, I did not see Wagner's speech, but one of the excerpts I heard from that is he gave a shout out to Lance Berkman, and really was one of the guys who pounded the drum for Berkman to be in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, you had a really kind of an interesting class going. You had Allen, you had Dick Allen, you had Dave Parker, who should have been in a long time ago. You had Sabathia, Ichiro getting in their first time, and Billy getting in on his last time. And when you look at Berkman versus Allen, those numbers that Berkman has are slightly better than Allen all the way across. F-WAR for Allen is a little higher because of the years that he played. That was more of a pitcher's era. But Berkman was the far better defensive player. Berkman could play a serviceable center field, a good right field, and a Gold Glove caliber first base. And Dick Allen, back in the day when he played, would have been a DH for most of his career. He was not a good fielder. He was not the base runner that Berkman was. I would, you put those two side by side and say, who do I want on my team? I'd take Berkman every day, twice on Sundays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was an interesting class, with 2 posthumous inductions. And, Ichiro's speech is getting a bit of play just because it was, it was notable from a comedy standpoint, which, typically Ichiro he's just a character. He's a guy that growing up and watching, this is kind of my late teens, early 20s era baseball players that are getting inducted now. And it's going to be a really fun kind of period for me to watch some of these guys getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. And Ichiro was one of those guys that, very, very few guys that go into the Hall are guys that people say they kind of changed the game or gave the game a different look. A lot of Hall of Fame guys that go in, they just say he was a standard, or he set a standard, or he made an impact. But very few Hall of Fame guys are kind of those guys where they changed something about the way the game was played. Ichiro was one of those guys, right? Um, and everybody loved watching Ichiro, and be it that because it was that he came from, a different baseball culture before he got here. And the athleticism and the different ways that athleticism was used, his antics in the outfield, his throwing motion, his arm, uh, his candor at the plate, and in the way that he, his his running bunts, and just all of the different things. I think it was really neat to see Ichiro inducted. He threw a jab at the one writer that didn't vote him in, um, and just he threw some shade at the Marlins, and a lot of nostalgia for his time in Seattle. Um, and so anyway, I thought it was really nice. It was really cool to see his induction. And it's CC Sabathia, another one. He was another guy who seemed to not change the game, but I think that he showed a lot of people that you don't have to be kind of the prototypical baseball physique kind of
Yeah.
guy to be to be a good player. And so that
Yeah.
was,
One
it's
thing with
another thing.
Sabathia.
This was just really cool about the Hall of Fame, and it's just one of those things about baseball that's just, man, it's such a fun sport, and it's so
Yeah.
cool from that standpoint, right?
Sabathia. The thing with Sabathia, he could be the last of a breed, because
Mm.
there are very few guys that go out and are just horses that'll throw 9 innings. And
Mm-hmm.
hopefully that comes back.
Mm-hmm.
With Ichiro, I think when you look at the way people hit today, it's uppercut, launch angle, try to get everything you can up in the air. Well, Ichiro shows that there's a different way to do it. And I think over
Yeah.
time, you're going to
Yep.
see more guys come back who can hit the ball on a line. Backspin will get the ball out of the park. And you can get guys on base and just drive pitchers nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the rules they have now. Wagner was one of a kind.
I think
And
so.
you're where I was about 10, 15 years ago when the Mike Schmidts of the world came up, and we're in the late. I grew up with the late 60s, 70s. Those were my high school. Young years, high school years, and it
Mm-hmm.
is fun to see those guys come up.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's an interesting time for those of us that are in our 40s ish. So this is the Gen X. I say, I guess this is the Gen X Hall of Fame heydays now.
So,
So
question for you. Let's
yes.
play who gets dealt where.
Woo. Okay.
I'm just going to throw a few names out. Suarez, where does he go?
I don't know.
I'm going to
Now
say
that
Philadelphia.
Yeah, that was going to be my first gut. Initially, I would have said the Yankees would have gone in all on him, but when they pulled the trigger on McMahon, I would have to say Philadelphia is probably going to end up being the first place that I would guess. Brewers would probably be my very close second.
Yeah, and I think Seattle is going to be in there, but they were talking about Jerry DePoto was on the front office yesterday with
Yeah.
Duquette and Jim Bowden, and they really like having Ben Williamson over there playing third base and being a good defense. Willie Castro, something tells me the Astros are going to figure out a way to get that done.
Yeah, who was it? It was Jeremy Branham commented on Chandler Rome's post, because Chandler wrote up, what I'm hearing Uh, and that was kind of the first time that Willie's name came up in anything that had to do with the Astros. And Jeremy said, the only reason that Willie's name is coming up in this conversation is because somebody leaked information. And so if that is the case, then I think that means that the Astros are actually in on him and are probably going to go after him pretty hard.
Brendan Donovan, I think he'd be a nice fit, but I don't see it happening because he's got too much control to cost him too much. Yeah, he's a league average bat.
Yeah, I don't know where I see him going.
I think he just stays.
He may not get dealt. Yeah, he may not get dealt.
I think he stays, and I think they try to find some stiff to take Nolan Arenado. You know, the Cardinals don't want to. The Cardinals don't want to pay that salary. The Cardinals' deal is they're trying to buy down salary, and so they're really in a box with Arenado. They, if anybody's going to take Arenado, they would have to take a lot of his salary, and he's got 2 years left.
Yeah, I mean, they maybe. I mean, when they were trying to deal him in the winter, they were willing to pay that. They were willing to pay some of that salary. That was the rumor, especially when the Astros were, were said to be interested in that. But yeah, that was a bullet that was dodged.
And not often do you say the fans were right. Fans were right on that one. Cedric Mullins, I think he stays, or maybe he goes to somebody as an extra bat. But I don't. I think the media is trying to write up Mullins as a target more than the teams are trying to write him up.
Yeah, probably. His name gets brought up the last couple of years, his name's brought up. And even in the winter, the last couple of years, everybody's kind of, who wants Cedric Mullins?
Yeah. Musical chairs.
Yeah.
I really hope the Astros take a look at Mickey Moniak. His name doesn't really come up all that much, but it is, you're right. It might cost you Chaz. Mm-hmm. It might cost you Chaz plus a couple of pieces.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of guy that, whether he's a guy that has had the bright lights. He seems to have settled into being able to say, I'm a starter. Extra guy is, he had a good year last year with the Angels. He had a pretty good year. He's having a pretty good year with Colorado. He can be a piece that you can move around.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I don't see him getting any pitchers. No, maybe a bullpen arm
really,
or two.
I really don't. Yeah, maybe a bullpen arm if he can pull in a bullpen arm in a deal that he makes, potentially. I've seen some people bring up Charlie Morton's name.
Yeah, he could fit.
I don't really see Dana and this team going after a starter. I really feel like they're probably going to put full faith in this collective group of guys that's coming back.
I could see him taking a shot at Charlie. This is going to be Charlie's last year. He's pitched better. It's a place he's played. He costs you about $2.5 million a month. Okay. At a 15, at a 15 mil salary. So he's not OTT expensive. He's the kind of guy that if you get an Arrighetti and you get a Javier and you want to have some safety behind those guys, he can tandem behind those guys.
I was looking up something real quick here because I have a spreadsheet that I was working with. So the Astros have, as it sits before the next CBT, it looks as though without unloading any money, it looks like the Astros have about $5.1 million in remaining salary before they hit
Charlie
CBT.
Morton. The question is, do they want to?
Right.
Let's see what Willie cast. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it'll be interesting to see what they do and how they try to pull off some of that based on money. So And so some of that, because the guys from the MLB roster that they would trade off, and they're not going to make up. Yeah, you look at some of those guys. What's Chaz making right now? 2.5,
Probably,
something
yeah.
like that. So there's not a lot of moving and shaking salary wise that this team could do to really make a lot of to make up a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
Castro cost him about a million, or to 1 year, 6.4. So they cost him a couple $1,000,000.
okay,
It's doable.
that's doable. That's doable. All right. Well, we kind of went long today, but this is good stuff. That's good stuff. Good stuff. So, what do we have coming up? Who do we have coming up here?
Have Washington this week.
Yep.
Washington this week. They're finishing up a 13 in a row, 13 games in a row, and they really need it. They're really going to really need some time off. They finally get out. They're finally done. Like Thursday's their first day off. Then they go to Boston.
Yep.
Hunter Brown
Boston's been playing well lately.
Yes, they have.
Yeah. Boston's been playing well lately. And then at the Marlins. So a little bit of a road trip there. Then up to the Yankees and then home for Boston. So we got their work cut out for them.
They do have their work cut out for them.
So these this next week to 10 days will be a test for sure. Will be a test.
They got hot teams behind them.
That's true. Yep, that's true. So let's hope for some good news on the injury front. Let's hope for some production in the bats and some rested arms.
Something other than this weekend.
Oh man, yeah, we need some different news. So maybe a team meeting
more like
to be
a
had
seance.
And fire them up. We'll break out some cigars and rum and summon Jobu for the weeks ahead. All right. Well, with that said, I'm Ryan. That's my man, Wally. This is another episode of Dirt Diamond Sports Talk. Find us out there on the socials. Hey, if you guys have some questions or anything that you'd like for us to discuss on the show, find us on Twitter. I'm at Ryan Bocross. He's at T Ernestos. And if you don't know what that stands for, you should go check the socials and actually find out. We're also at Dirt Diamond ST, which stands for Dirt Diamond Sports Talk on X. Until next time, we'll see you guys. Go Stros!
Go Stros!